Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I will be tier ranking the Kindle Unlimited romances I read between July and December. I'm filming this at the end of November, but I don't have any actual like KU reads planned for December to read, so I'm not going to include it in this tier ranking. So take that as you will. Okay, so let's get started going over the books that I read. This is in no particular order. This is not by month. I didn't do it in like a month order. So we'll just start right with Devil of Dublin, which is the most recent KU book I finished. I think this is a mafia second chance romance. They met when they were friends or when they were kids, and now she has come back to Ireland and they meet each other again, and it's an odd book. Like it takes a very weird turn. It becomes like a thriller, but then it also tries to be really emotional. It was like a fine romance. I think I gave it 3 stars. Like, it wasn't anything spectacular. I don't love this author's writing. I don't think I gave the other book by them a very high rating. So it was fine. Same with Brutal Intentions. This is a stepdad-daughter romance, and it's written by Miss Lilith, which is a disappointment that I wasn't a fan of it. But this is basically about a guy who's is forced to marry the heroine's mom to like get his inheritance, and then they have a relationship, and I just didn't like it. For one, I'm not a huge fan of the breeding kink, and this is like very prevalent in this, and it just overall was boring, and I found the characters to be very, very immature, and the hero was like almost 30 and he acted like he was 12. So then we have Ivy, which is a book that I think I gave 4 or 5 stars, but it's kind of faded from my memory a little bit. It's a dual POV story, has 3 points of view. It's following 3 girls while they are going through college. One girl moves in the beginning of the semester, and they're not really friends, but they're all like dating each other's family members and stuff. It's very messy and fun, and one of the heroines, Ivy, and her relationship is like the highlight of the book, but it's kind of just like a fun time, and it's not necessarily anything that will stick with me. So we have Wings of a Butterfly, which is a horror erotica, and this is not like a good book, but it was entertaining. But I cannot, like, in good faith call it a good book. It was not a good book. The writing is terrible. The plotting makes 0 sense. A lot of it's convenient, and it's just like an incestuous relationship, which is why it's not a romance, and I didn't think it was that good. So I gave it a 3 star, but because I had fun reading it, but like it wasn't good. Savage Games, I gotta be honest with you, I don't remember anything to do with this. I think it's a bully romance set at like a college of some sort. I think it's Why Choose. I don't remember. So it's a C. River of Shadows is a fantasy horror romance. Hades and Persephone retelling. A girl goes to her father's resort after he has passed away, and she discovers a hidden world. She has to go into the underworld, and she has a relationship with Hades. The issue that I have with stories like these is that once their relationship becomes that of Hades and Persephone, it's pretty boring. Usually the Persephone character is just sitting there doing nothing, and that's kind of how I felt with this one. I think I gave it like a 3 star. It was alright. The latter half was like almost a DNF, but the beginning was very fun. We then have Nightshade, which is another horror romance. It's very long. It's about a girl whose father, there's multiple timelines, and it's kind of confusing, but it's basically like purgatory, and it is told in 2 points of view. Present day, a girl is investigating the death of her father, or the disappearance of her father. And then we're also getting flashbacks to a girl who is, her mother is burnt at the stake in the first chapter, and then she goes and lives with like at a monastery, and she befriends / has a romantic relationship with the duke's son in their area. And like, this book would have been fan-freaking-tastic if it wasn't 600 pages, and the ending is not great. So I did end up giving it 3 stars, but I would say I enjoyed it more than these, but less than Ivy, if that makes sense. So like, if I had a middle between here, I would say that's where it would go. So then we have Pageant, which is Lilith's newest Why Choose. It is Mafia, it is Russian, and I did end up giving this 5 stars. I thought this was fantastic. I don't like it as much as I liked First Comes Blood, but this is much, much darker. The heroine in the beginning is the widow of a mafia guy, and it is assumed that she set up him with the FBI. And she is on the run. She's in Milan for a modeling shoot, and she ends up getting kidnapped by the heroes. They're putting on this pageant in which they have kidnapped a bunch of women, and they keep them in cells, and they make them perform, and whichever one goes through and makes it all the way to the end will be the wife of one of the guys. And the heroine in this is like bad freaking ass. Like, if you didn't like Promised in Blood because the heroine is really passive, you'll really like this. I think the ending was fantastic. I just don't think that I'm gonna continue because I don't like breeding kink, and I don't like children, and that's like, that seems to be the like where Lilith is going with her books. So I probably won't continue, but I think this was a lot of fun. It was really sexy. It was very well done, and I really enjoyed it. So then we have The Ritual, which is a dark, like, cult story about a girl who is going to college, and she ends up having a romantic relationship with a guy who is the enemy of this, like, of her ex-boyfriend, and he is part of this cult. Like, it's a fraternity, but they have to perform different tasks, and it'll garner them success once they leave college. And this first book is about him participating in a ritual in which she has to become his chosen, and they have to go through a ritual together, and then she like belongs to him for X amount of time. I really enjoyed this. Like, the hero 100% is obsessed with the heroine. He will do anything, say anything, do anything to have her and protect her, and it's delightful. It is 100% it 100% uses its 600 page length to its advantage. Like, it 100% makes up for the fact that it's so long, and it's just so fun. The hero is great. We have Untainted, which is a fantasy romance that I don't remember, like, at all. It's about a girl who was orphaned when she was a kid, and she is like training with a weapons master, and then she ends up discovering that she's actually like a lost child of some fae family or something or other, and it just wasn't very memorable at all. It was really short, just not something that I love. Same with Moon Touched. I do remember everything vividly. It just wasn't very good. Basically rejected. She gets rejected by her mate during a ritual. She gets kidnapped by a rival pack, and then they enlist the help of her to take down her current pack because they're bad. It's alright. So we have Psycho. This is the second book in this series, and I liked it a whole lot more than I liked the first one. I liked August, the psychopath hero, way more, but the issue that I have, and this is an issue that I have with a lot of romances, is that I don't like early hookups if the plot can't carry, and that falls into this category. Their relationship is very soft and sweet, and I really like August, but they have an early hookup, they're together the majority of the book, and the rest of the plot isn't interesting enough. Like, the plot itself is interesting, but they don't, it's not handled in a way that I really enjoy. So then we have Something Fabulous, which is kind of an odd one for this list. It is a historical romance, and in the beginning of the book the hero is proposing to the other hero's sister, and she rejects him and then goes on the run. And the book is him enlisting the help of his brother, her brother, to help him track her down, and it's delightful. I definitely like have read reviews that said that this they bully the hero and all that kind of stuff, but this is just very, very, very fun, very whimsical, just over the top and dramatic, very dramatic, and I absolutely had an amazing time with it. It's so fun, and I liked both of the heroes. I do think that they like made fun of the main hero a lot, but it was just a delightful time. We have Dirty Kingdom, again, sort of like Savage Games. I don't remember this really at all. So it's gonna go in C. All I know is it's a high school bully. So next up is The Words. I have not had the best luck with this author previously, but this is basically about, it's a second chance romance about a girl who had a, like, couple-week fling with a guy in high school. She became his tutor, and he was in a band, and they had sort of this budding romantic relationship, and then he ends up betraying her. And then we flash forward a couple years. He is in the throes of addiction, and his band hires her to be his, like, sober companion because they know that he hates her, or she hates him rather. And they, like, this is true. She does not like him at all. I would say that the bullying elements of this, like, I've heard people say that he's very mean to her. I don't necessarily get that. I mean, he definitely is not the best. Like, he does say some not great things, but it's not like the worst bully I've ever read, and it's so emotional. It's so just like perfect. It's literally two people who overcome their circumstances, overcome the things that have been done to them separately and by each other, and their romance is beautiful. The angst and the tension between each other is fantastic, and yeah, I love it so much. It's fantastic. It's S tier. Might be one of the best romances of the year. I probably will have to go back and reread it. It's another one that's over 600 pages or a little under 600 pages, and it uses the word count very well. Bulky is another one. Okay, this is gonna be controversial. I'm gonna put it in D tier. It is not bad like Wings of a Butterfly. I just don't like smut. I don't like smutty novellas that are essentially pointless. I just don't like reading them. I don't, as I read more and more romance, I just don't find that I enjoy sexy scenes for the sake of them, and so this was literally just not for me, basically. We have Mistwalker. I'm gonna put this in C tier. This was okay. It's a paranormal romance. I'm not a monster paranormal romance girly, and it's basically about a woman who, there's like this mist that takes over for 72 hours every year or some shit like that, and she ends up, the mist gets in her house before she can lock up, and it ends up being like, it like comes into her arm, and then she has like sexy dreams, and then she meets a guy in a grocery store, and they start dating, and it's like they're all combined, and it loses the plot. Like, the plot makes zero sense. It loses the plot about halfway through, and it just goes wild, and not in a good way. So it's just not really my thing. We then have Carnal Urges. I read the first book in this series, I think at the beginning of the year, and I didn't like it, for the reasons I said earlier with the early hookup and all that stuff. And then I decided to pick up Carnal Urges to give J.C. Geisinger another shot. This is an Irish mafia. The hero's in the Irish mafia. In the end of the first one, this hero kidnaps this heroine, and this is like the culmination of that. It picks up right where it left off, and she is sort of his hostage. I fucking loved this. I gave it 5 stars. This is so good. I loved their relationship. They were so good together. They made so much sense. Their personalities worked so well together. The hero was an absolute doll, an absolute cinnamon roll. It was sexy. It was like the chemistry between the characters just popped off, and it was delightful. My camera is about to shut off because I've been talking so long. Okay, but yeah, absolutely fantastic. Very excited to continue. One of the best mafia romances that I've read in a long time. Just like the relationship was fantastic. And I don't even generally tend to like stories like this because, like I said previously, when the heroine is like sitting in the same spot for the majority of the story, I don't like it. But wow, this really worked for me. Really loved the hero. A lot of like trope subversion in this that I really enjoyed. Just very good. Then we have Filthy Little Pretties, which is a Gossip Girl, the first book in a Gossip Girl series. And I think this is supposed to be Blair and Nate. And it was alright. I think it was like above average. But I didn't like the way that the hero acted about halfway through the book. Like once they got together. Okay, so it starts out as like it seems like it's going to be a polyamorous or maybe like a love triangle, and then she like picks a definitive person, and once she picks a definitive person, even though they're not together, it's very annoying. Like his behavior is very, very, very annoying, and I just was not a fan at all. But it's just like fun. Like I didn't obviously put it in D tier because it is a lot of fun. Some things annoyed me with it. So then next up we have Maybe Next Time. This is a novella. It's a marriage in trouble. The hero in the beginning of the book kidnaps his wife and takes her on a vacation to solve their marriage issues after she tries to divorce him. This is S tier, y'all. I fucking love this. I really like Christina C. Jones. I think she's a good author. I think she writes very typical romance plot lines and makes them very, like, it feels like a breath of fresh air, but this is different from the ones that I've read by her, and I freaking loved this. The hero was sexy, it was funny, it was swoony. I love a good marriage in trouble. I think that they're coming back together was absolutely beautiful, and wow, it really worked for me. It was a good novella. I thought it did a good job of balancing, you know, sexy times with them actually rekindling their marriage and working through things together. I think it was very honest and believable, even if kidnapping your wife maybe isn't that believable, but I thought it was just so good. So good. Just like I swooned. So good. We then have Guild, which is the first book in a fantasy romance series about a girl who is the saddle of King Midas. And he, like, basically touched her, and now she's made of gold. And in this first book, she is on her way to Midas in a different kingdom, and she ends up getting kidnapped by a group of mercenaries, and then she gets kidnapped again. I really enjoyed this first book. I thought that this is an interesting world. The heroine is interesting herself, and I thought it was a good, strong beginning to the series. This could be the time that I read it, or what I was, you know, all of that. As, you know, books are subjective as they are, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good start to a fantasy romance series. I'm hooked on the idea of, like, these kings that have powers, and I'm excited to see the king that kidnapped her, because I think he's going to be the love interest, and I'm pretty interested in him. So I'm definitely excited to continue, and I think it's a good fantasy romance. Adult fantasy romance. We then have Still Beating. This is, I'm sure you've heard of it, a very popular dark romance. It's about two people who in the beginning of the book are kidnapped together by a serial killer, and he forces people to have sex with each other, and then when they fall in love, if they fall in love, he kills them. She gets kidnapped with her sister's fiance, and then like 30% of the way through the book they end up escaping, and it becomes about them bonding and trying to get through life together. I'm going to put this in A tier. I thought this was really good. It's very good. It's very emotional. It's very hard to see them each dealing with things individually. Like, the hero is addicted to alcohol and the heroine is kind of just like floating through life and not really dealing with anything. And so seeing them lean on each other was great. The issue that I had was it didn't go as in depth as I wanted it to. I think when you hear about a book like this, you're kind of expecting a certain level of like emotion to go into it and some sort of healing, and I just didn't get everything that I wanted out of it. Like, for example, The Highwayman is a good example of characters working through trauma that I wanted out of this one that I just didn't get. We have this time skip, and it seems like all their growth happens during that time skip, and there's a heavy emphasis on the heroine's growth, the heroine's trauma, and not really a lot on the heroes. So it was good. It just was not everything that I wanted it to be. So we have The Demon King. This is a paranormal romance, and the hero is Lucifer, and the heroine goes to Lucifer's hotel in Vegas because her friend is missing, and they sort of do an investigation into it. And sort of like her other book, it's fine. Like, it's very mediocre. I really couldn't tell you much that happens in it, and it was just like a fine time. So next up we have Love Unexpected by QB Tyler, and I really didn't like this. This is a stepfather romance. After the death of her mother, they end up forming an emotional attachment. They didn't previously have a romantic attachment. I think she had a crush on him, but he didn't, you know, return those feelings. And they start hooking up. I have an issue with QB Tyler, and it's that her books rely way too heavily on sex, as if that grows a relationship. And I didn't like this. I think QB Tyler is just not for me. I didn't see any sort of like standout moments. I didn't see characters that were new, original. I didn't see the taboo as anything like fantastic, and I was tired of reading sex scenes. So that's kind of my thoughts on that one. I probably won't read many QB Tylers going forward. Good God, there's so many books left for me to talk about. Holy shit. Okay. Next up we have A Song of the Marked, and I'm going to put this in A tier as well. This is a fantasy romance, and the romance is not the best. Basically, it's about a girl who is attempting to find a cure for her mother's illness. It's this curse that goes on in this land, and she's the only one that's ever survived this illness. It killed her entire family, and then the woman that she considers her mother also had it, and she sort of survived, but now she's growing ill. So she has joined this band of mercenaries, and they go to this place that's sort of a blight, and they run into the hero, who is the right hand to the current king, and she ends up getting caught by his soldiers and brought to the king, and the king wants her to work with him to figure out how to get rid of this blight. It's very interesting. I really like the world. I really like the kind of complex character dynamics, and you don't really know who's telling the truth and who you can trust. The romance is a little not well fleshed out, but I think the world is incredibly interesting, and I'm very excited to continue. We have Untouchable. This is like the penultimate bully romance. The book opens up with the hero forcing the heroine to give him a blowjob, and it starts a bully romance in which the hero is in no way redeemed, and it's sort of the heroine deciding what she will and will not accept from him. I hated this. I think I gave this 2 stars, and not for the assaults, not for any of the CNC or anything like that. This was just fucking boring. Like, you take out the fact that he was assaulting her, and it was just like a bully romance that literally had every single bully romance trope thrown into it, and then added 200 extra pages that weren't needed. It was incredibly boring, and I get like why people could give this 5 stars because of the heroine. Like, it's a new twist on romance and all of that kind of stuff, but I just thought it was really boring and juvenile. Next up, we have Pretty Cruel Boys. This is a bully romance, and in the beginning of the book, the heroine is attempting to get an item from one of the hero's gang member, like one of his co-gang members or whatever, and he ends up finding out that she's trying to get a sex tape from him she was forced, that her friend or her sister was forced to make, that pushed her friend or sister to commit suicide, and she's trying to get revenge basically. And the hero kills the dude and then tells her, if I ever see you again, I'll kill you. And they end up going to the same school. A bully romance ensues. I really liked this. I think this was a very, very different take than Pretty Cruel Boys. Honestly, if you like Untouchable, I think you'd really like Pretty Cruel Boys. It is along the same line. The hero is kind of iffy in his taste. There is some CNC in there, and it was good. Like, it was a good kind of refreshing bully romance. We have Behind the Bars, which is an emotional second chance romance. Lots and lots of bullying. Sort of typical for Brittany C. Cherry. Both of them are musicians. They were friends when they were in high school. And then they come back together when they're adults. I thought it was really good. It's very, 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 very hard to read the bullying in the beginning, because it's quite intense. And then I felt like after they sort of are adults, a lot of the emotional aspects of it kind of taper off. And they go back and forth one too many times, but the relationship itself is really beautiful. Alright, so next up we have Bending the Rules by Christina C. Jones. This is a, like, sort of an enemies to lovers situation. They're not really big fans of each other. One of them thinks the other one's stuck up. And then they end up having to work together, and they have a little romance. I like Christina C. Jones. I think she's very... I'm actually going to put this in A tier, because I think this is a really good book. It made me cry. And then I'll put Bending the Rules in B tier. Like I said, I really like Christina C. Jones. I think she does character chemistry very well. It just tends to be like the outer plots outside of her relationships that I don't really enjoy. So I love the romance. It's the other elements that I wasn't a huge fan of. We then have Sidetracked. This is the second book in the Mindfuck series. Serial killer, FBI, boyfriend. Serial killer, heroine, FBI, boyfriend. This is the second book. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was very cute. There's a lot of jealousy amongst the two of them for, like, co-workers and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And the heroine is, like, actively killing people while her boyfriend is on the lookout for her and for also another serial killer that is, like, trying to hunt her down because they're dating. And I thought this was a really good, like, sequel. Really enjoyed the story. It was really fun, but it wasn't, like, spectacular. So it was a B tier. It was good. I think I gave it 4 stars. It's fun, but it's not, like, my favorite book of all time. Alright, so then we have Don't Hex and Drive. This is the second book in the Stay a Spell series, and it is about a witch and a vampire, I think is what he is. In the beginning of the story, he hits her with his car, and they have sort of like this antagonistic relationship, and then they have to work together to solve a crime. I thought this was fine. I didn't love it as much as the first one. Again, another issue that I had with this one is they have an early hookup. They hook up through the majority of the book, and the plot doesn't really carry. We have Bad Boys Break Hearts, which is a angsty, college sports romance. I think the hero is football, I think, and if I remember correctly, she has a relationship with one of his friends, and they knew each other when they were younger, and there's some, like, angst and tension. As you can tell, I don't really remember too much. I remember enjoying it when I read it, but I couldn't, like, in good faith recommend it a bunch to you. Like, if you were looking for specific things, I couldn't tell you because I just don't really remember anything about it. All right, so then we have The Point of It All by Christina C. Jones. This is the romance about a woman who was recently diagnosed with cancer, and she goes to a local small town and buys a vineyard, and with the intention of like fixing it up and getting it running before she passes. And she meets the previous vineyard owner's son who lost the property, and they have a romantic relationship. I don't love storylines like this. I don't like emotional in this way. I don't like cancer and stories like that. I just don't. And that's the majority of this. Like, a lot of conversations around her decisions on treatment and things like that. And this is getting put in B tier because, like I said, her chemistry between characters is always fantastic. And I love the hero in this. And I love the heroine in this. I just don't love stories about cancer. So, or illness in general. Sold to the Mob Boss. I hated this. I did not like this. It's so odd. So basically, he runs an auction. She gets put up in the auction. He gets jealous. He sees her and wants her, and so he buys her. And then it becomes like this weird thriller. They're running through the woods. People are killing them, and then they're banging while people are trying to kill them. It's not good. Alright, so then we have A Daughter of No Worlds. This is a fantasy romance about a girl named Tisana, who in the beginning of the book was sold into slavery, and when she is a young adult, she's in her 20s, I think 19, 20, she gets enough money to buy her freedom. She ends up killing the guy that owned her, and she goes on the run to the Order, which is this government entity that is split into two factions, and they are sort of responsible for two different types of powers. And they tell her if she wants their help getting the slaves that she left behind out of the place that she left, that she has to join an order, and she has to she has to apprentice with someone. She has to take an exam. She starts to apprentice with Max, who is an old Order member, and it goes from there. It's a very slow burn romance. It's a pretty good fantasy. I think I fucked myself by reading it very sporadically here and there, so I didn't connect as well to it, but I think it's a good fantasy romance. Alright, so we have The Truth About Heartbreak, which is a foster sibling romance, and this was angsty as fuck. It was good. She always had a crush on him from the beginning, but they don't do anything until she is in her 20s, and it was angsty. He has like a wife or a fiance, and they're like going back and forth. It was delightful. It was emotional. Loved it. Alright, so we have Devil's Advocate, which is the second book in the Devil's Playground series. The first book is about a girl who has a relationship with her stepfather, and he's kind of fucked up. And this is the conclusion to that. I hated this. It was bad. I didn't like this. I was very mad about this conclusion. It was full of conveniences. Characters were weird. It didn't end in the way that I'm glad that it didn't end, but I just hated this conclusion. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I just didn't like the way it ended. Alright, so we have Private Eye. This is about a woman who is a cam girl. She has to work with an FBI agent who she was chatting with online to catch an arms dealer who's using her chat room to smuggle arms and stuff. It's very sweet. Put it in B tier. It's not wild or anything, but their relationship is very sweet. Dominant heroine, golden retriever hero. I had an issue with the narrative style. It's told in like points of view of people like around that time that have nothing to do with the story and have their own books. I say nothing to do with the story, but they do have things to do with the story. I just didn't think it was like their points of view were irrelevant in my opinion, and it kind of brought the story down. Next up, we have Tide, which is a angsty romance about a woman who was rescued by the hero after 12 years in captivity, and we skip forward a couple of years and they find each other again, and they go from, you know, reluctant friends to this very sweet romance. I would say it's like C tier for me. It's alright. It's not what I love from these sorts of stories. It's very sweet and slow. I just wasn't like the biggest fan. I don't really have like a reason for that. I just didn't like it. Alright, so then we have Flock. One of the worst books I've read this year. If you don't know about Kate Stewart, I would recommend looking into Kate Stewart. So problems with her aside and problems with her other books aside, this was just a really bad book. I read it for a video, gave it 2 stars. I rant in that video for a long time about why I didn't like this book. This is bad. Really, really bad. Really bad. So, no. If I had lower than all of these, I would go lower. So, next up we have The Highwaymen. This is a historical romance about 2 people who grew up in the same orphanage, and they had a friendship, and then the heroine gets assaulted by one of the fathers that works at the orphanage. She tells the hero about it, and they try to run away. An attack ensues in which he kills someone, and then he ends up going away to prison. And then we flash forward about 10 years, and she's working for the Scotland Yard, and they have brought in this notorious criminal who she ends up striking up a deal with to get revenge for the people that killed her best friend in prison, and they enter into a marriage of convenience. I fucking loved this. It's one of the best romances I've read this year. Like I could talk about this book endlessly, and I have done in so many videos, but if this is still on KU when you see this video and you haven't read this yet, like please pick it up. It's so freaking good. It is so emotional. They work through their trauma so beautifully. It has a scarred hero. It is just so beautiful. Like the love they have for each other is just unmatched. They're truly soulmates, and it just so freaking good. So freaking good. Alright, and then the last book, finally, is Sin and Discipline. This is a student-teacher, piano teacher, BDSM relationship romance. I didn't love it. It was alright. It was very mid. Very mediocre. Very mediocre. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it, to be honest. So, that is my tier ranking. I have been talking for an absurd amount of time. I think this is less books than I got last time, but apparently I just had a lot to say. So, let me know down in the comments your thoughts on my thoughts on any of these books, or if you have a KU book that you think I should check out based on my S tier and A tier romances. I would love to hear it. If you don't have anything to say, leave a heart down in the comments. If you want more content from me, you can check out my Instagram and my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. It is a horror podcast. It's a lot of fun. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.